Europe just is incapable of really engaging Russia in World War III. It would be a disaster. But who knows where Europe is going to be in 5 years? This is the thing, is that, we laugh at these people. I find Merz and Starmer and all these people just be ridiculous. And again, they have very low approval ratings, and that should give us hope. Let's just hope it stays that way and they find a replacement. The danger is they are working hard, again, to scare their people, and they're having some success. You find some polls where, 60% of the people in this country or whatever think that the Russians are going to attack in a few years, which is absurd. But they are constantly bombarded with this kind of news, this false news, and it does have an effect. Maybe they are working to transform their own populations. They're not succeeding so far, and let's hope that they fail, but there is a danger that they will succeed, again, with the help of false flags and so on and so forth.
Right. I mean, it's also just disappointing to see, going from Schultz to Merz. It's like, if there's another election, can we get somebody different? It just seems like the establishment just produces one type of person. I mean, same thing in the UK. Look, they've had like 10 prime ministers in the past decade, and they've all been garbage. It's just like nobody's really different. I mean, same thing for the U.S. I mean, look, I'm not one to complain, just about Europe. I mean, we went from Trump, Biden back to Trump. And so it's, we're not exactly.
No. It seems to be true. It's just in general, it's just that we are not producing, statesmen. We are producing the kind of leaders that we see right now. And there are alternatives. There's the alternative for Germany, the AfD, and which does appear to be something really different, that they have taken that, they have, I think, correctly diagnosed many of Germany's its ills and would present a different policy. But all the other parties are working to keep them down, even though they are the most popular party. Another poll showed that just yesterday. If it comes to it, like it looks like they might actually win an election, I don't think it's beyond these people to declare some sort of martial law or whatever. I mean, it's just, that's the way they view the AfD and real opposition in these countries. It's just like, we can't permit this. That's the end of democracy if the most popular party wins. So we'll see. Europe will have an interesting future.
Just going back real quick to something they said about the thing that binds Europe together is this hatred of Russia. Do you think that's true? A large part of what is keeping the EU kind of together collectively is this hatred of Russia. It seems like that's what they care about. They don't want to talk about domestic problems. They get together and they're always just talking about what can we do to stop Russia.
Right. Well, obviously, I think there's a real effort to do that. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. And each of these leaders are trying to scare their own populations. And they're having some success, like I've said. But still, when you look at those low approval ratings, even though people, maybe you'll get large majorities saying, oh, yeah, Russia's very bad, this threat is very serious, they're still much more concerned about getting their social services, their benefits from the government that they're used to getting. And they are unhappy, when the government is actually diverting resources to Ukraine. So at this point, I would just say that, actually, I forgot your question. Sorry.
What binds them together is this hatred of Russia.
Yeah,
right?
So it is, the thing is, it seems to be that glue seems to be very, pretty effective within the elite. That's the thing, that they can get together and they can all agree that Russia is terrible and this is and there's just a couple of bad people out there, Orban and Fico, but the rest of them can all get together and condemn Putin and that's what, like you say, that's what binds them. And then if you look at the point I was making is that if you look at the common people, the publics of these countries, maybe on paper it looks like they're going along for the most part, not as much as their leaders are, but there isn't any real passion. You can have a huge, overwhelming majority, or a lot of people say, yeah, but it's not something that they're passionately devoted. It doesn't really mean anything. When it comes down to it, they're not interested, as they said, well, they've made clear, we don't want to go to the front. Don't send our sons or our sons and daughters, to Ukraine, and please give us our services. That's still where they are. So it's not really working, within the publics at this point. It's something that's more of an elite phenomenon.
Well, if it's an elite phenomena, then it's something that we can say that kind of binds the EU bureaucracy together, and NATO to some extent as well. So if when this is all said and done, Russia is going to win. It's going to end somehow, some way, and there's no way that they can sugarcoat it and say that Russia didn't achieve its objectives. Will that just then, if what was binding them together, this bureaucracy and NATO, was this hatred of Russia, will that destroy NATO and the EU? Because, I mean, you can't just be hating them forever, right? I mean, people will get tired of it. They're tired of, we can't just blame Russia for our problems forever. The war is over now. Right. It's done. Yeah. And so what do you guys have to show? You failed as your job. You told us all this stuff and nothing got better for us. And we sacrificed so much of our own money, and our industry, our economy is completely collapsed, shot. Yeah. We don't have any Russian energy. We're stuck. And now we are on the side of countries like Israel and the United States, which are becoming increasingly unpopular. And now we just have this icky feeling being associated with this side, the wrong side, the losing side.
Yeah, well, I'd hope so. I mean, there's a chance, when I think it was just maybe yesterday that Politico had a headline that said, Belgium is now a Russian asset. Because Belgium has put its foot down and said, no, we're not going to steal this money for you. But now there's such a ridiculous headline. You see, the thing is, I see these headlines. I remember seeing them, similar things like during the Russiagate hoax back in the U.S. And they say, like, people have to start seeing through this. It's amazing, though, how long that can go. Clearly, like, the Russiagate thing has, to a great extent, fizzled out. It did its damage. I think it affected people's perceptions of Russia, but it's just like, there are still a few diehards out there who really believe in the whole thing, but eventually it fizzled out. And, I guess we can hope we can see something similar, but...
is that what you hope for? The EU to break apart? You think that'd be good for Europe? Like, is that... could there be a strong bloc like that? I mean, they can have trading agreements. I mean, I guess that was the whole idea of the EU. It's like fragmented, we're weak.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. It's the EU is presented with a real challenge. I mean, there are these, we call them collective action problems. If you get everybody to, if you need to get everybody signed up to do something, it just takes one veto, to weaken your position, or even to completely prevent it. So yeah, that's a real challenge. Clearly the EU is becoming increasingly unpopular. Again, I think it was maybe just this morning I saw polls were showing that there's a growing, let's say, hostility to the EU and growing support for withdrawal from the EU in places like, especially France and Poland, and a lesser extent in Germany, even though. And again, France and Germany, they are basically the EU. There's still a ways, a good distance from a majority. I think it's like 25% within France wanted to just leave the EU, but that's growing. And so there are, it's a difficult problem. You understand, there's advantages in hanging together, but at the same time, people are seeing the disadvantage of having this unresponsive technocratic elite, that obviously isn't concerned with the everyday lives of common people. So what do? How do you overcome that collective action problem? Yeah, the EU, maybe, I think it needs to fall apart, but something could replace it. I don't know what that something is. It's difficult to overcome these challenges.
Yeah, it just seems like a big problem with the EU from the basic, the fundamentals of it is that you have unelected bureaucrats. Like, there's just no they don't represent what the people actually want. I mean, that's obviously a huge problem, right? And it's kind of ironic that we try to talk about, like, oh, we are liberal democracies, and it's like there's nothing democratic about the European Union.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, you have the European Parliament, but those people don't have very much power at all. They have really very little power. You're correct. It's the bureaucrats that have the power, and they often make decisions that are very unpopular in different countries within Europe. And And then those countries are faced with, having to bow down and accept, what the technocrats in Brussels have decided, or maybe defying them, as you find in Hungary. But then they suffer economic consequences. Funds are withheld, fines are imposed, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Do you think that Western civilization is dead?
I think it really has come to an end. Maybe it could be,
Right?
I think so. I don't say that lightly. There are a lot of people who say, oh, it was always phony and it was nothing but, subjugation and slavery and, but there were many great things that this Western civilization achieved. I'm a great admirer of those achievements, and I find it sad, that it has reached the point that it has. It's just, I look at England and France, and again, it's not that there weren't crimes associated with in the past with these governments. There were great crimes, but there were also just marvelous achievements. Just there was a reason that the world, looked up to Europe and admired it greatly. But I think it's gone. It has been replaced by these idiots and these technocrats, and the cultures have been hollowed out. Maybe, I just hope that something will replace it, and but it may take a long time. We may be decades or even centuries of dark ages ahead of us. I don't know.